If you only take one thing away from this week's video, let it be this. Get a dog. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below. It'll give you a pretty good idea of what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. But in short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But not today. Today is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series where we take a look at a movie that was recommended by you guys. I watch a movie that you guys recommended in the comments, and then I let you guys know what I thought of it. Did I like it? Did I not like it? And more importantly, is it syllabus worthy? Is it worth being on my horror movie syllabus? So if you didn't see the thumbnail somehow or read the title, the movie that we're talking about today is Bad Moon. And Bad Moon is recommended by 13 Niche 13. And they recommended this in the werewolf video, the werewolf subgenre video that we did a while back. So right off the bat, I'm being tipped off that it's a werewolf movie that I'm going to be watching. But with a title like Bad Moon, you can kind of tell that it's a werewolf movie anyways. And it dawns on me that there are not a lot of werewolf movies that don't have titles that tip you off that they're werewolf movies. Maybe Wes Craven's Cursed is a generic enough title that it doesn't necessarily let you know that it's a werewolf movie. But most movies that are werewolf movies kind of tip you off in the title. And this is, no exception to that rule. This was, however, a movie that I was not really familiar with when it was recommended. So I was excited to get into it because I generally like werewolf movies quite a bit. I've watched a couple of them in this series, actually. And I tend to be pretty satisfied with the werewolf movies that I've watched. So this is a one that I had, some pretty good feelings about going into it because not only is it a werewolf movie, but apparently it's based on a book about a dog named Thor. And so the dog is a main component of the movie, dog versus werewolf. And am I here for that? Yes, I am. So I was pretty excited to watch this movie and see if it was going to live up to the expectations I started building up for myself about it. Did it? Let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're talking about today is Bad Moon. Bad Moon came out in 1996 and is directed and written by Eric Red. Eric Red, pretty well known as a writer for writing The Hitcher and Near Dark. Those are some classic horror movies. And his reputation really kind of comes from that. He has written other things, but that's really his claim to fame. And he's become a fairly well-known character or figure in the horror community, at least the diehard horror fans, primarily because of working on those films, which is interesting because his fame or his notoriety probably is bigger than his oeuvre of work really dictates. And this movie is kind of an example of what I mean by that. But we'll get into that in just a second. If you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a woman and her son and their dog Thor, and they live kind of near the woods. And the boy's uncle decides to come and visit them after encountering some issues where he had his trailer parked near the lake. And turns out that he is a werewolf, and the dog is aware of this and is trying to warn the family, and they're not really paying a lot of attention to him. And hijinks abound as the man slash werewolf winds up getting confronted by the dog who's trying to save the family. But I won't go into it any farther than that so as not to spoil the movie for you. But what you're getting from that description is the most important thing, which is dog versus werewolf. The biggest strength of the movie for me is that premise, dog versus werewolf. The dog perspective is what makes this movie feel fresh and original. I imagine there's probably other movies that there's dog versus werewolf where the dogs are a part of the movie, but this is the only movie that I've seen that I can think of where the dog is the hero of the movie. He's the protagonist. He is the one who's fighting the werewolf. He is the one who is, trying to, be, to save everybody. And I'm here for it, man. I love it. And this is not by any kind of mistake. It's by design. It's based on a book called Thor by a guy named Wayne Smith. And I guess from the book, which I've never read, the book is from the dog's perspective, actually, or at least large parts of it from the dog's perspective. So the dog is supposed to be the central character. And this works for me. this works for me. It's not like one of those silly movies where dogs talk or something like that. It's the dog is played just by a dog, and the family, the mom and the son that he's trying to protect are ancillary characters, and they are they have dialogues like that to drive the story forward. But really, the dog is the hero. He is the protagonist of the film, and he's very likable. He's a German Shepherd. He's very cute. He's very friendly, except for when he has the fight. And when he has the fight, it's awesome because he's righteous in his fighting. He's protecting the family. He's going after bad people or bad animals, and it's awesome. And the only thing about it that doesn't work for me, or he's kind of it doesn't not that it doesn't work, but it's kind of frustrating, is that his family doesn't listen to him. He's barking at stuff, and they're just like, "Oh, what are you doing? Oh, let him go out." It's like he's clearly agitated about something. You need to pay attention to that. What's the point of having a dog that can protect your family and be a guard dog, and you ignore it? Like that kind of drove me nuts throughout the entire movie. I think the problem with it is just that you are given these other characters, the mom and the family, and they're given a lot to do. So unlike the novel, you're not really truly getting just the dog's perspective. You are getting it from the family's perspective, and maybe it would have been better to just have just the dog's perspective. I'm not sure how easy that would be to do in a movie, especially without having like a dog who had internal thoughts or something silly like that. So it may have been too much of a challenge, but I do wish we got more dog perspective and less people perspective because their perspective is stupid. They don't listen, they don't pay attention, it's really kind of infuriating because that dog is trying to let them know that they're in danger and they're just not paying attention. Another thing I really like about this movie is the wolf effects. Like they are not great effects. You're not getting American Werewolf in London here, but you are getting practical effects that are charming and good enough to not take you out of the movie, to really still keep you engaged. I really actually like the practical effects here. I do think the wolf looks good. I think he's intimidating looking. I don't think that he looks too cheap or cheesy. I do think that the fights between the dog and the wolf are pretty intense. They look pretty good. If you are an animal lover, if you're a dog lover, it can be pretty harrowing to see this dog in danger. And trigger warning for people. The dog does get injured in this movie, so it's kind of visceral. It's kind of real. And I do like that they have some gore in this movie. Now, the movie starts out with some really great gore. It's got a really great opening scene with a cool werewolf in there and some really, really cool gore that I thought was great. And I wish they had kept up that pace throughout the entire movie. Alas, they don't. There are lots of scenes in the movie that drag a little bit, that don't have that gore, that don't have that action. And if they had kind of kept that pace of the opening of the movie, if they had kind of given you the movie that the opening delivered, I would probably like it even more. But when you are getting the werewolf, you are getting the gore. It is working for me. It is cool. It is good. I do think it looks good enough. Like I said, it's slightly cheap looking and everything, but it's still practical. It still looks good, largely practical, and it was convincing enough to me. It's bloody enough for me. I really was satisfied with the wolf action, especially wolf versus dog. That all worked for me really, really well. I was having a really good time with it. Where the movie really stumbles for me is the acting. Michael Pare, Mariel Hemingway, Mason Gamble, none of them are good in this movie. They're all bad. And not saying that they're bad actors, but they're not good here at all. It's actually fairly painful to watch. The dog, by far, is the best actor in this movie, like by a country mile. And that shouldn't be happening. The dog should not be outshining all of the actors on screen. And that's a problem, primarily because they focus on these people. They focus on this family and their interpersonal relationships. They're given a lot of scenes where the dog's not even there, and that's a problem because if you really are going to focus on those things, you should get some actors who can land their lines. And it's not that it's the greatest script, anyways. Like some of the dialogue's not great. It's not Eric Red's best work, not by a long shot. But good actors could have at least made this dialogue work. It's trite, but it's not horrendous. But the acting is so flat and just bad. And it's so bad that it might just make it campy good. Maybe. But that may be me being a little generous because I really like the dog stuff in it. And I wish there were more dog stuff. A better solution would just be less people, more dog. That would have been the better solution. But if you had to have these people, they are bad enough that it's almost camp. I almost kind of wish they'd played it up a little bit more, but then if they had, maybe it would be too much. I don't know, but it arguably can't be good stuff. Like I could see watching this movie with some friends and having a good time and having a good laugh at these actors, these performances, because they're pretty bad. But I would still have preferred more dog, less acting, and that would be a better mix for me. So the mix is a little off for me. In that it focuses on the bad actors and their storyline rather than focusing on dog versus werewolf, which is where their money's at, which is where their gold is at. It's a little bit of an off mix, but it doesn't mean I didn't have a good time. However, it also doesn't mean it makes a syllabus. So what do I think about that? Let's find out. So, as always, we come to the question, is it syllabus worthy? And the answer is nope, it is not. And the main reason why is it's just not nearly as good as so many of the other werewolf movies out there. We've talked about this before. Werewolf movies are not as prevalent and ubiquitous as vampire movies, but what is out there is by and large good to great. There's very few bad werewolf movies out there. And I wouldn't say this is one of them. I don't think Bad Moon is bad, but there are aspects of it that are bad, namely that acting, and the script is flimsy a little bit too. But the dog versus werewolf stuff is great. I love that stuff. Just not enough to bump out one of these better werewolf movies. They're just not gonna be moved for this movie. It's not gonna happen. The bad acting does hold it back from being able to make it to to make the grade for the syllabus, and it's not gonna really qualify for really any of the other subgenres, like maybe dysfunctional family. I don't know. It's not really a good fit for anything but werewolves. So you're competing against the best werewolf movies. You're not going to beat them out with this. Like maybe if it had kept that carnage going from the beginning all the way through, if it had just been a gore fest like that with all kinds of action and werewolf, gore and stuff like that, especially fighting the dog, maybe that would do it. Maybe that would push it into into the conversation a little bit more because it would feel like a really fresh idea, the werewolf versus dog, and it just has nonstop fun and much less of the human drama that's not being sold because of the bad acting. Maybe, but it didn't do that. It would have been more of a contender. It would have been a lot of fun. But what I get here is fun with some bad acting that may also be fun, especially if you have a drink and some friends around, which is not a bad time, man. That is not a bad way to spend my time because the movie is a good time when the dog and the werewolf are fighting. When the dog's on screen in general, I'm having a good time. When the dog's attacking people, I'm having a good time. When the werewolf's killing people, I'm having a good time. When the family's talking about stuff, much less of a good time. Unless you can get into the campiness of it. But honestly, I just wish I could get back to the dog and the werewolf. That's really where I was at on this. So is it worth your time? Yeah, it's like a 90-minute movie. It's definitely worth 90 minutes. If you like werewolf stuff, definitely check this one out. I like werewolf stuff, and I think this one fits just fine. I see the better movie that it could have been, and I've seen better movies than it. So that's where I land on it. But it doesn't mean I disliked it by any stretch of the imagination. I still have yet to really hate a movie that we've done on this series. So thank you guys for that, and thank you for your comments suggesting movies because that's been really helpful. So this is one of those movies that I think you should check out if you haven't seen it and you like werewolf movies. But I definitely think that there are better ones out there. So that's the official word of the horror movie syllabus on that. And now it's time for us to look at a horror trivia pursuit card and try to answer it live on camera as I get my glasses on so I can read because I'm that age. And we're going to look, of course, at the monster category on the card because we're talking about werewolves. We definitely got to check out the monster category. And the question is this. What 2008 J.J. Abrams produced film was filmed using all handheld camera footage? I'm pretty sure I know this one because we've talked about it and we've done a video about it. So I'm pretty sure now I know the answer to this one, but I'm gonna talk just a little bit to give you a chance to think about it because I needed to think about it for a brief second. And the reason why is because there are two J.J. Abrams monster movies that came to mind the second I saw his name in the question. But one of them is directed by J.J. and one of them is not. And as you noticed, the question said that it's a J.J. Abrams produced movie, not a directed movie. And that's the clue that tells me which movie they're talking about. I'm kind of talking a little bit again to give you guys some time to think about this, even though you guys probably know this one. It's not a tremendously hard, question to get. And like I said, we did talk about this. So if you're an avid watcher of the horror movie syllabus, you've already heard about this movie. And we focus in particular on the fact that J.J. Abrams did not direct this movie even though Lots of people think that he did because his name was all over the advertisement for this movie. They really pushed the J.J. Abrams connection because he had a big name at the time. And the director of this movie at that time was not that well known. Pretty well known now. That's another hint for you. So I'm kind of hinting around at this a little bit because I have my answer, but lock in your answer because I'm going to give you my answer and my thought process on this. So I was initially going to say Super 8 because that was the first movie that jumped to mind when they said, J.J. Abrams and it's the monster subgenre or the monster category on the card. But I realized they're talking about a J.J. Abrams produced movie, and J.J. directed Super 8. The movie he didn't direct but did produce famously is, of course, Cloverfield, which was directed by now famous director Matt Reeves of the Batman and Planet of the Apes movies, but he was not super well known at that time. So they were promoting J.J. Abrams, but it's Cloverfield. That's 100% found footage, where Super 8 is about people, about kids, frankly, making a movie with Super 8 film, but it's not a found footage movie. Cloverfield's the found footage movie. Cloverfield's definitely the answer, but we're going to double check the card just to be sure. And sure enough, Cloverfield 2008. And yeah, that's a fairly easy one. I expected you guys would get that one, especially because we did talk about Cloverfield. I do like that movie, although 10 Cloverfield Lane is better. But it's a good movie, and I hope that you guys got that right. If not, let me know what your answers were in the comments below if they were wrong. If you answered Super 8, let me know. But if you had a funnier answer, let me know for that one for sure. But that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed New Moon. Thank you to 13 Mish 30 for the recommendation. I did enjoy it. I had a good time with it, even if it didn't crack the syllabus. And for the rest of you guys, keep those recommendations coming because the list is long, but I don't care. I'm having a good time doing it. I'm having a good time making these videos. Hopefully you're having a good time watching them. Until next week when we do something different, I'll just say class dismissed.